This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. No. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Can you guys tell me a little bit about Kendric?
I think we could describe him as dynamic, very charismatic, compassionate, all the qualities I think that you would want in a kid. We think that Kendric exudes.
Deb Cromer and her husband Keith are describing their 12-year-old son, Kendric. Kendric was born with sickle cell anemia. A few weeks ago, my colleague Lizzie O'Leary talked to them about their experience.
I remember the day that we found out Kendric was less than 2 weeks old. Telling my husband felt like the weight of the world had fallen on our shoulders because I knew what it looked like. Keith dropped to his knees that day and cried. And it devastated me.
Her son's body was attacking itself. People with sickle cell have a group of disorders that cause red blood cells to change and break down. They turn into these sharp half-moon shapes. Healthy cells die, and the sickle cells can block blood flow, causing excruciating pain. Sickle cell affects over 20 million people worldwide. 100,000 of them are in the U.S., and more than 90% of those 100,000 are Black. The disorder is genetic, and while Deb and Keith had family members with sickle cell, both thought they weren't carriers.
I was actually raised with a cousin who had sickle cell disease. And so I knew all too well some of the things that could go wrong with sickle cell patients because I was very close to her. She had been hospitalized many, many times. And so we were quite aware. And what we decided after losing our first baby was that there were no choices here, that we would not be on board with aborting a child. We wanted to carry this baby to term. And with only a 25% chance, we thought we're going to take the chance.
So my initial, not knowing much about sickle cell, but negativity about it was that my son would not live a long term. So, it really devastated me at that point in time that my son was going to have a long life of hardship.
Kendric did struggle a lot, but this kid, he's a fighter.
That's difficult. Last year, he missed 100 days of school in 23-24. And he still somehow came out completing every assignment with straight A's.
Kendric's body was frequently in crisis. He couldn't ride his bike or play outside without the fear that suddenly his body would be racked with pain. But then Keith and Deb found out that the FDA had approved a type of gene therapy that could help and maybe even cure Kendric.
We actually saw a clip on 60 Minutes, maybe 2 years prior to the gene therapy approval by the FDA. So we were inundated by phone calls and emails and videos of that 60-minute clip.
That 60 Minutes episode included Dr. Francis Collins, director of the largest biomedical research agency in the world, using a very meaningful word.
I believe that this looks like a cure. I got to be careful. From every angle that I know how to size this up, this looks like a cure.
So, of course, we wished and dreamed that would be helpful for Kendric, but we thought that might be for multiple years down the pike before before we can even get the opportunity to have that.
But that dream came much sooner than anyone expected. And last May, Kendric became the first person in the world to go through a commercially approved gene therapy for sickle cell anemia. It was a huge decision, one that had to be fast-tracked because Kendric got so sick last January. And Deb and Keith, they were terrified of all of the unknowns.
Poring over the documents felt heavy. There's lots of talk of, what could happen. The worst case scenarios, of course, with any disclosures, but they just seemed really scary, frightening. But Kendric continues to remind us of his resilience.
It does. And when you see the word death on a disclosure form that you have to sign off for your child, it's disheartening. You read that over and over. That's the ultimate, end. And that you signed off on that, it's definitely scary.
Today on the show, sickle cell anemia has been wrecking people's lives for decades. Now, there might be a cure. But who will get to use it, and what does this mean for other types of gene therapy? I'm Cheyna Roth, in for Lizzie O'Leary. You're listening to What Next TBD, a show about technology, power, and how the future will be determined. Stick around.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, just hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
After meeting Kendric's parents, we wanted to talk to someone who has been following the progression of treatments for sickle cell anemia. So we called up Gina Kolata. She's a medical reporter for the New York Times. She's been following the Cromer family's journey for almost a year.
Kendric's family and Kendric were eager to talk about what was going on. They wanted to make people aware of this disease, what it does to families, and the hope of having a cure with gene therapy.
The pain from sickle cell was devastating for Kendric, but the treatment had its own set of terrors. It involves removing stem cells from the blood or marrow of the patient, modifying those stem cells, and then putting them back in the patient's body. And with that comes a lot of chemotherapy.
And for the first few days, he doesn't feel anything much. After a few days, somebody wheels a cart with some frozen cells in a couple of bags. And they put the first bag into a little water bath, and they warm it up to body temperature. And then they infuse it into him. And then after the first bag, they give him the second bag, another 1 minute, and then it's over. He's got the cells. He's just got to wait for the cells that they just added, make their way to his bone marrow, which they will do, and take up residence there and start to divide and grow a whole new immune system. I was really surprised at how bad it actually was. I mean, I knew that you had to have chemotherapy. I knew that there were side effects, but I didn't realize quite how bad it was going to be.
Growing Kendric a new immune system involved numerous blood transfusions and countless medications, all in a small room in a hospital.
So it's kind of endless. But after a few months, it's pretty much over. He can go back to school finally. He has an immune system again, and he can live a normal life.
As someone who has reported on medicine for a long time and reported extensively on sickle cell, what's it like to have this new universe of gene therapies suddenly open, or at least a little bit open, to a population that has been suffering so much?
It's funny. I have kind of mixed feelings about it because I'm so excited for people like Kendric. He's never had a childhood. He's never had a life. He couldn't do anything. He never learned to ride a bicycle. Pain crisis again. Can't go outside in the cold. Pain crisis. He couldn't do anything. He was getting more and more withdrawn into himself, missing a lot of school. So it's so exciting to think some of these people can have a normal life. But what's really sad is I think, about all the people who are sort of on the sidelines thinking, well, I want it too. I want a normal life. I don't have access to this. So there's a lot of people who can look on longingly and say, I really want it. And then you say, well, yeah, maybe 10 or 20 people out of the 20,000 who could be eligible could get it each year. And so it's like they're dangling a cure in front of you, but you can't have it.
I wonder if you could talk to me about that a little bit, because the therapy is commercially available. It's FDA approved. But what are the hurdles to getting there, to actually getting the therapy?
Well, you have to find a medical center that has signed all the contracts with one of the two companies. And apparently this is a big, long negotiating thing. Then you have to qualify too as well. And to qualify, you have to have a certain number of pain crises a year. I think you have to be at least 12 years old, although they're now starting clinical trials with children as young as 5, if you can believe it. I'm not sure if there's an upper age cutoff, but after a while, when people have had sickle cell for a long time, there's a thought that they wouldn't be able to tolerate that chemotherapy. Their body is just too damaged.
Then, of course, there's the monetary costs of all this.
Medicaid does pay in, I don't know, maybe like half of the states. A lot of the states, they haven't yet authorized it. So you have to, if you're a Medicaid patient, you have to be in a state that would authorize it. Then the hospital has to get your insurance company to agree. And one of the big issues for them, they say it takes a long time because these therapies are really, really expensive. The money for the actual gene therapy, like the $3.1 million, is only part of it because you also have to pay for the long hospital stay and all the other care you're getting. So this is a lot of money. Hospitals are reluctant to lay it out in advance. So it's a big thing. You have to go to the hospital. They have to put you on their waiting list. They often decide according to who is the sickest, whose insurance is actually likely to come through pretty quickly. So Kendric was lucky, but a lot of people are not going to be as lucky as he is.
Yeah, I was wondering what you think the next few years for this kind of treatment might look like as the scientific capacity expands to do these gene edits, to actually make this incredible change. Is it going to be something that might be more widely available?
I think it will be more widely available, but also I think much better things are going to come along that are cheaper, easier, more widely available for everybody. There are a lot of companies interested now, and they have a lot of good ideas. But I think we're in a period now where there's a lot of hope, but a lot of access.
Do you think there is anything that you've seen in this process, or that these companies or medical centers have learned that translates to other diseases and conditions that are, based in some type of mutated gene?
Every time I open my emails, there's another gene therapy being tested, being approved. It's kind of incredible. And for many years, people thought gene therapy was just dead. It wasn't going anywhere. There were some real disasters with it. and companies had given up, and it just looked like it was never going to work. The main problem now is if you have a very rare disease, it's getting a company or anybody interested in doing it. So a lot of times the parents, they start support organizations, support research. They get everything going with some researchers at a university ready to go, but you need a company to do the clinical trials. And if it's a really rare disease, they may have trouble finding anybody to do it. So it's not that it can't happen for other diseases, and it is happening big time, but there's also diseases that the parents are really frustrated. They say, we think we have something here, but we can't take it to the next step.
Sickle cell has long been a neglected disease. When Lizzie talked to Kendric's parents, one thing they wanted people to understand is that the pain these people have is very real. Here's Keith and Deb Cromer again.
Just because one person is active and able to do certain things and they have sickle cell doesn't mean the other person does. The opportunity, it is serious. They're not just complaining about a little bit of pain. And also for the medical community, that please take heed to someone who comes into the medical or ER or ED and tells you that they have sickle cell, and they're not just there just to seek for pain medications to get high, that they really need assistance.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's disheartening that the medical community sometimes discounts the pain that sickle cell patients actually go through. And the fact that there are not many areas of the country where people have educated themselves on what sickle cell actually looks like, what patients actually go through. And so they oftentimes do appear as drug seekers. So I think we would be remiss if we did not note that the sickle cell community needs a larger spotlight shined on the pain aspect. Not just curative therapy, but also the care that it takes to, as a caregiver, we watch it consistently, but outside of our four walls, a lot of times people just don't have a clear understanding about what it takes to care for a sickle cell patient.
Those people include medical professionals. Here's Gina again.
I spoke to one guy. He told me that he carried a card with him, and he said, here's my hematologist's name. Here's how to contact him. Every time he went to the hospital, he was an academic. He was like an assistant professor. And he wore a suit when he went to the emergency room, so he didn't look like he was just somebody off the street. And still, he had problems, even though he had this card. It's really difficult because for these families, it's not like there aren't that many people coming into emergency rooms with sickle cell. And I think the emergency room doctors, who I assume are busy, harried, and see a lot of people coming in saying, I need some sort of an opioid, just don't want to believe it. It's easier to say, no, I don't believe you, than to take them seriously.
How much of this do you think is just based in racism?
It's one of those things where you sort of can't, everybody thinks, and probably with good reason, that of course it has to be. But there's no way for me to answer that without just giving an opinion that's based on nothing, just based on the fact that most people with sickle cell are Black. But that's the thought. That's why the disease was neglected for so long.
After the break, more from Deb and Keith about what's next for Kendric. This podcast is brought to you by Miro. Innovation is important to the future of many businesses, and processes need to be clear, fast, and ultimately more productive. Take a big step to solving those problems with the Innovation Workspace from Miro. The Innovation Workspace comes loaded with AI-enabled tools to help teams get from idea to output faster. Miro's Innovation Workspace will help your teams accelerate through the full innovation development cycle, helping them to be faster, more productive, and ultimately more effective. Its new AI-powered tools and features can visualize tasks ahead, condense documents to produce summaries in seconds, and even create complex diagrams and flowcharts using natural language. Whether you work in innovation, product design, engineering, UX, agile, or IT, bring your teams to Miro's revolutionary Innovation Workspace and be faster from idea to outcome. Go to Miro.com to find out how. That's MIRO.com. This episode is brought to you by Grammarly. Your team spends over half their time writing, and we all know how that happens. One confusing email turns into 12 confused replies, then a meeting to get aligned. Grammarly is a trusted AI writing partner that saves your company from miscommunication and all the wasted time and money that goes with it. When every word your team writes is clear, concise, and on brand, everything gets better. 4 out of 5 professionals say Grammarly helps them gain buy-in and action through their communication. Teams that communicate better with Grammarly report 25% faster time to resolution for support tickets and 52% less time spent writing sales emails, saving 19 days per year per employee. Grammarly works where you work, from docs to messages to emails. It integrates seamlessly across 500,000 apps and websites. No cutting, no pasting, no context switching. 15 years of experience, just about every IT certification, and never sells your data. Join 70,000 teams and 30 million people who trust Grammarly to get results on the first try. Go to Grammarly.com/enterprise to learn more. Grammarly, enterprise-ready AI.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
We heard in great detail about all the pain and trauma associated with the gene therapy. And that's a lot for anyone, but it's especially a lot for a kid. So Lizzie wanted to know, how did Keith and Deb, as parents, decide to try out this new treatment?
I've been following your family's story, and it's very clear that Kendric is a really smart kid and someone with a pretty amazing grasp of kind of all the variables in what he is going through. What kind of conversations did you guys have with him when you realized this might be an option?
Well, we sat down as a family and talked about this gene therapy and the options that come along with it and the process, as well as the difficulties and things that may occur with having the gene therapy. Kendric seemed to grasp the idea of the gene therapy and basically just said, I don't care what it takes. I just want sickle cell to go away.
One of the things that he was concerned with, though, is what's going to happen when I don't have sickle cell anymore, right? This is my identity and it's all I know. And so how is that going to affect me? What are people going to think and what's going to happen to me? And so there were lots of conversations just about how, I'll tell you, I remember seeing the 60 Minutes episode and showing it to Kendric and him saying, oh, I'm not going to do that. That was his initial reaction because I won't have sickle cell anymore. And what would I do then? Now, in just having an opportunity to think about it before he even knew that it would be a possibility for him, he started to turn around because of all of the pain associated with what he was going through. But his initial reaction just psychologically, I believe, was to say what's going to happen to me after. He didn't know any other life.
That's a lot of weight when you're a little boy.
Yes.
It is. It is. It's, we call him a little old man, jokingly, but it's, you have to laugh sometimes to keep from crying, because the way I see Kendric is having to have taken on so many adult situations in his 12-year lifespan that he's just mature way beyond his years. In a very short period of time, he has matured into a person that he could run circles around most high schoolers and entering into college.
I think obviously the hardest thing being a parent is to see your child suffer. And I guess I just wonder if you all feel comfortable talking about the process of watching Kendric be sick, but then also knowing that the gene therapy would require some suffering to get through.
These kids face danger in a lot of what the disease has to offer. There are Kendric's, limbs were starting to fail him. And he'd already had gone through a procedure to repair his hip. And, but the avascular necrosis that was in his hips had started to spread. And so it was in his back and in his shoulder, and it was crippling. And so for us, and what we know is that once it starts to spread to your organs, sickle cell can really, really be very damaging and restrict the blood flow and often cause strokes and brain damage and death. And we actually, through working just in the sickle cell community, have met parents who have lost their children very young. And so for us, it was a matter of just trying to determine what the best course of action would be for our son. It might not be the best course of action for everyone. But for us and all of the things that he was going through, we could see gray skies ahead.
What was the day like? I believe it was October 21st when Kendric left the hospital.
Oh, wow. Emotional. It was emotional. There have been lots of tearful moments over the past weeks, and I felt just filled with so much joy, but also anxiety.
Yes. Fear.
Because he was fragile and he had been through a lot. His skin is burned to almost beyond recognition. He felt weak. And even though they were feeding him with with lipids and TPN, and he looked, like he was strong in that sense, there were so many signs that he had really been trial by fire. And so there was some trepidation about being able to care for him. But there was so much joy about him making it through it.
How does he feel now?
He has his good moments and his bad moments. He's up and down. He still throws up quite often. He has some energy, boosts of energy at times when he's running around the house. Not literally, but he's just up and down and pacing up and down the floors, just happy to be able to move around. There's other times he can't get out of bed or doesn't want to get out of bed because he doesn't feel great. He has pain, but he always describes it's not sickle cell pain. And so I think that's a different form for him as well, not to realize that he's no longer in pain. As far as for sickle cell.
Have you all talked about the future, whether that's, the next few weeks or even years?
we've talked about the need to reinvent ourselves and not really knowing what that looks like.
Right.
You know, for me, for sure, just as a mom caring for a child who has become increasingly ill, I'm very, very thankful for, having a real estate career, but it has been diminished so much over the past few years that, I'm thinking, what else is there? Or what else can I do? Or do I stay in this? I absolutely love it. And then there's Kendric, who has friends that are saying, "Hey, join the track team," or what he's like, maybe I can run with daddy. I need to work out. I need to get some weight, like things that we don't recognize. And I believe all of us are just excited about what the future will hold. The travel,
Yes.
the planning.
The planning.
We get to plan.
We've missed a lot of opportunities because of his sickness. We were planning to go somewhere, then he gets sick. So maybe go out on a town with one of, just us as a date. We can't go out because he's not feeling well. Or even just as an individual to do something that we elect not to go because he's sick. So we don't want to lose one partner alone to deal with the issues of his sickle cell. Or he might have to go to the hospital. It's definitely going to be fun to find something different about ourselves and not worried about Kendric's health.
Has Kendric had the mental space to think about, I don't know, what he wants to be when he grows up?
Absolutely.
He has a plan.
What's his plan?
So one plan is he wants to be a geneticist. So that's, I guess, to give back for all the things he's gone through. So he wants to actually go to high school, graduate early, so he can go to college early. So that way he can get to medical school early, so he can get to become a geneticist, so he can go on about his practice.
Deb and Keith, thank you so much for your time and for being open with your family's story. I really, really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Deb and Keith Cromer are the parents of Kendric Cromer, the first person to receive a commercially approved gene therapy treatment for sickle cell anemia. Earlier, we spoke with Gina Kolata. She's a medical reporter for the New York Times. And that is it for our show today. What Next TBD is produced by Evan Campbell, Patrick Fort, and myself, Cheyna Roth. Our show is edited by Paige Osborne. Alicia Montgomery is Vice President of Audio for Slate. TBD is part of the larger What Next family. And hey, you know what? Now, more than ever, we'd really love your support to keep doing thoughtful, independent journalism. And one of the best things you can do to help us is to join Slate Plus. Head on over to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up today. We'll be back next week with more episodes. I'm Cheyna Roth, in for Lizzie O'Leary. Thanks for listening.